And are you in the peak inflation camp, David, or are we going to hang out here at this elevated, sticky, stubborn level? Where do we go from here?
Does it depend on China, and does it depend on Ukraine?
All those factors matter, and then there's also some of the domestic factors too. Take in Australia, even say natural gas prices may still have some further sharp rises coming in certain states next year. So there still will be certain elements of this inflation pressure, even with some of these idiosyncratic forces. I would say in general, we're going to see inflation has seen its peak this year, but it will still be above what we had been used to pre-pandemic next year. It's more about in the coming few years that we do expect that we go back down in the direction of where we were back in 2019, where we were still debating how many countries needed negative interest rates. And the big reason for that, I would say, dominating everything, is demographics. That has not changed at all. And that is a rapidly aging populations across multiple, especially advanced economies and some emerging economies. That is a dominant factor. And I think all these other things we're talking about matter, but long term, that drag will still be there.
Yeah. Graying societies, understood. David, a couple of seconds ago, you said something very fascinating, and that is this whole thing about revenge spending having legs, travel, experiences, spending, doing whatever in person, right?
Yeah.
And people making hard choices in order to continue doing that. Those choices have involved compromises or skimping. The kind of consumption which is losing or losing out in this trade-off would be what and where?
Well, take the example within the necessities camp. People are trying to be a little bit more frugal, say at the grocery store, but they still are certain necessities you just need to buy. But interestingly, when we look at, say, the share of total spend as a ratio, we've gone back pretty close to where it was pre-pandemic on necessities. Now, on the actual more discretionary spend, we've noted, and this is across multiple markets, and in fact, the ones that have been open longer, their ratios are pretty much back to where they were pre-pandemic. We're still seeing a bias towards the travel and entertainment spend and towards some of the other discretionary retail. I think the discretionary retail is the one where, as you get more of these pressures and more of these headwinds coming in, that's where there'll be more of a compromise, because that was already, a lot of goods purchases was already happening. A lot of retail therapy happened during the pandemic, and it was done online. Now, of course, we are seeing the omni-channel presence being particularly important, and we note that particularly for whether it's small and medium-sized businesses or large merchants, that actually if you had that omni-channel presence, you've been outperforming during the downturn, and you've been able to fully participate in the upswing as well.